And we are live right now. Welcome to Hyperspace Heroes. Since Brown Leader is not here today, we are rebranding it as Scruffy and DB Unplugged.
Woohoo!
So I
Unplugged
know
or
Brown Leader gave
unleashed.
Unleashed. There you go.
There we
Brown
are.
Leader gave me all the power. So let's see if we can give him a meltdown while he's watching from his comfortable room somewhere in this warm southern climate. So this is like our third live stream, and basically we feel like Dad gave us the keys to the car and turned us loose. So we have unlimited power.
Power.
Yes, if you can put the Emperor's voice to that. So let's get this show going.
Podcasting, the final audio frontier. These are the legends of Brown Squadron.
Our computer is picking up a strange signal. Here, sir, you better take a look at it.
The ongoing mission? To explore the Star Wars universe and other nerd culture topics. To seek new content and new cantinas, bars, and lounges. To boldly annoy Scruffy by making too many bad jokes. Welcome to the Hyperspace Heroes Podcast.
All right, we are
I
here.
was jamming. Sorry.
I was jamming out. All right, and we got a special guest we're adding to the stage right now. Welcome, Steve Carbo.
Steve, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing very well.
Applause.
Hey, great to have you, sir. Great to have you. Thank you.
Without Brown Leader here, who's going to ask us to sign in?
Oh, yeah. Okay. All wings report in.
Well, you're first there, dude.
So.
So.
Okay. Brown 2 here.
That makes me Brown 4, and Brown
Okay.
Leader is on shore leave apparently.
He's on some kind of leave anyway.
And Steve, don't worry, you'll get your call sign before the end of the show.
Nice. Very nice. I'm excited.
All right. So Steven here has some upcoming awesome events and as part of the the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance, right?
That is us. Yes.
That's
us.
a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but the more you say it, the more you get used to it. Not really. I stumble over it every time, and I'm the president, leader, and everything. So yes, like, is it? Yep. That's us. The Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance. That is us.
See, it rolls
Awesome.
off your tongue.
Awesome. So we start out all our shows with our guests with just a couple of quick questions for you. So what does Star Wars mean to you?
That's a pretty big question.
I know, right? I know, right? We're jumping right off the ledge here.
Yeah, we're not holding back, boss.
Yeah. So it pretty much, I mean, it has defined a large portion of my life. Where I'm at right here is actually the house that I grew up in. I bought it from my parents. So as long as I can remember in this house, Star Wars has been a part of it. There's probably some Star Wars figures buried out in the yard from when we were playing. My friend 2 doors down, we would play with his TIE fighter. My buddy, like a block down, he had like the Falcon, Jabba, Rancor. My other buddy down there. So it's like this, just where I'm at has been Star Wars for as long as I can remember. I've got 2 children, grown adult children now, that Star Wars has been part of their lives. My wife, Star Wars is part of her life long before I had ever met her.
Oh, she's a keeper.
Yeah, I know, right? She before I even knew who she was, she had a Star Wars wedding planned out. Like, she very artistic, and she drew it.
We're not worthy,
and all of that. So, I mean, it really is a big component, and in more recent years, it's become an even bigger component of my life in a lot of different ways. My day job is as a therapist. I work with families and children and have for about 26 years now. And stories and sci-fi, fantasy, comic books, anime, all of that, tabletop games, card gaming, all of that kind of culture is huge with the kids and families that I work with. So kind of professionally, personally, entertainment wise, Star Wars has been just a part of, gosh, going back to probably, I don't know, I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I'm getting to be a little bit gray now. So it's been a long time.
You know, you have gray. I've got nothing up here. So I would take gray, sir.
Yes.
So, do you have any Final Cape Jawas buried out in that backyard somewhere?
That I can honestly say I do not have. There isn't any of those out there.
How about blue snags? I've never owned a blue snaggletooth.
I've one.
Yeah.
I've got one. I've come across one in all my journeys.
When I was younger, my cousin and I used to love Star Wars. We'd play with our Star Wars toys. We collected them, and he had a vinyl Cape Jawa. And I remember thinking, my Jawa was so awesome because it had the cloth cape, and it was so much cooler.
Yes.
And somewhere
No.
that Jawa and that vinyl Cape Jawa is buried somewhere out in the sands, and it's gone to
man.
time. I know. So, what was your first Star Wars memory?
Yeah, that's a good one, and I've actually kind of told this story a few times. So, I was born 74, so I was only like 3 when the first movie came out, and Empire. I was kind of not really knowing much about movies at that time. My family wasn't really into that, and then when Return of the Jedi came out, I wanted to go see it, and I was not allowed. So, I never got to see Star Wars till it was like on the small screen. So my introduction to Star Wars was the toys. My family, I grew up Baptist, so we didn't do like anything like that. You don't go to movies, you don't smoke, drink, go to dances, gamble, stuff like that. So movies were out of the equation, but I could play with the toys, and I can distinctly remember going to a rummage sale with my mom, buying a snow speeder and an X-Wing Luke. Those were my first 2 Star Wars toys. I'm pretty sure I don't have either of those anymore. I've got so many toys in this house. I don't think I think my snow speeder went the way of like parting it out. But those were the first 2 toys that I can distinctly remember getting. And then for Christmases and birthdays, I would get a few things. I never had like a ton of them, but those 2 toys were my first Star Wars memory. And most people are like, oh, my dad took me to the movie, or my uncle, or I got to see, or a lot of people say stuff like that. But mine was getting those toys.
And it's amazing you remember specifically what they are.
Yeah, it was those 2.
I wish I could remember that. I don't remember what my first toys were. I do remember seeing the movie.
Do I remember seeing the movie?
No, I do remember seeing the movie
Okay.
in the back of a convertible Impala at the drive-in.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So if you started off with toys, what inspired you to become a collector?
So I, at a young age, started collecting baseball cards and comic books. So that was like my kind of introduction to collecting. And I didn't really, I mean, I played the heck out of my toys. Like, I mean, if you're talking about like beaters, like my action figures, my Kenner figures would have been beat up because we would bury them, put them down the stream and the culverts, and like have them wash away. Like we would beat them up, which is what they're for. They're toys.
Right.
In terms of collecting, I collected baseball cards and then comic books. That was like my thing. So things like Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, Jim Lee X-Men, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, back in the black and white Eastman and Laird days, like that kind of stuff was like when I got into comics pretty big. And then baseball was my favorite sport for a long time. So like, oh, collect baseball cards. So like keeping them neat in binders or in hard cases or stuff like that. And it wasn't until probably early to mid 90s that the Star Wars toy collecting like bug bit me, and then I've never recovered to this day.
No, it's terminal.
It is.
So you're talking the 90s, so that was the bulky He-Man style Luke and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with that is I lived in Minneapolis for a short time, and there was like 1 million Targets, 1 million Walmarts, FAO Schwartz, KB, Toys R Us. So I would make loops and go pick them all up. And I can distinctly remember trading Power of the Force 2 carded figures for vintage carded figures. So I still have a bunch of them hanging on my wall. I probably got about 30 carded vintage figures, because at that time they were like throwaways. They were the leftovers at KB or whatever. So people bought up tons of them. And then the Power of the Force 2 stuff came out, and people were like, oh my gosh, I need to get this variation of Boba Fett with the half circle, or the long saber short saber long like all those things. People were going nuts. And I was like, well, I've already got 12 of them because I went to all these Targets. I'll trade you for a General Madine or a Wicket or whatever. So that's I remember doing that, and that period of time was like about 9 months to a year of just buying all those toys and then just trading them off.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to see that.
I can remember getting the orange carded Power of the Force, and I still have some that I boxed up, label was in it, sealed them. I said, we're going to put these away. They'll be worth $1 million. Yeah.
No.
They're still sitting there in that box.
To be fair, there's a little bit of a resurgence coming. It's never going to be 1 million, but there's like all those kids, like I hear that up here, because doing events and stuff will get kind of like the college age or slightly older. They're like, oh, I had this one. I love this one. And I mean, they're not paying like $50 for it or anything, but there's like a resurgence in interest in them. At least.
Yeah, I remember you couldn't give them away, and then nowadays it seems like they're going about $10, $15 a piece now. So it's making a little bit of a comeback for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't start collecting until 99, and I remember walking into Toys R Us and seeing just this giant wall filled with those figures, and I think they were like a 99 cents or $1.99 a piece.
Yeah.
Oh, I know I picked up a bunch of them.
I remember going there. There was a Toys R Us here in Duluth, and going to the midnight episode 1 midnight release of the figures, and like people lined up to get them. And it's like, it'd be like so cool to have something like that happen again sometime, because it's a bygone era, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's beating each other up for another Rune Hako action figure,
Right,
you know.
right.
I do miss those midnight release parties. They were basically. You know? I remember standing in line waiting at Toys R Us for that midnight release, or standing around at Myers waiting for them to lift that sheet off of it, and seeing getting that first peek at the stuff, and that hype, which just just seems to be just gone nowadays. Nowadays, you walk into Target and you see the same pegwormers that you've seen for 6 months now. You could actually write your initials on the card and the figure and still see that same figure hanging there, 6 months later.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just
there's 1,000 Landos at our Walmart here in town.
Yeah, I almost want to buy them all just to get them off the shelf so we can find,
right.
maybe let's put something new on there.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance.
Yeah, actually, so I'll do the short history. So I went to Star Wars Celebration Chicago, really got like, this is awesome. And what made it awesome was the fan area, the fan clubs, the Mando Mercs, the 501st, all that stuff. Love that. Went to Celebration Anaheim. I almost exclusively stayed in the fan area. I completely missed like all of the stage stuff, like whatever. Didn't care. It was more fun in the fan area. So then going to ICCC, I was like basically like this is Star Wars Celebration fan area on a giant scale. Like it's basically all the best parts of Star Wars Celebration just blown bigger. So seeing like other clubs, what they've done, I'm like, oh, I wish we had something like that here in Minnesota. I wish we had something. And I know Josh Phillips from the Tennessee club, and he was talking about like kind of like re-energizing that club at the last IC. And then like Kentucky, I know is a big club. Georgia, I'm just like, oh man, the swag that they make, the cool stuff that they do. Like I'd love to do that. So I came home and it was like a 14-hour drive with my son. Yep. And I was like, wrote this manifesto that I posted on the IC about like just how awesome it was. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just start. Because when I was in Anaheim, I was walking down the street and saw I think it was maybe the Empire State Club guys. And I was like, oh, thank you guys for what you do. Appreciate it, because they give away all that stuff. And I'm like, I just love to do something, or I wish we had something like that. And he's like, well, it just takes somebody to start it. And at that time I was like, I can't do that. But after ICCC, I'm like, we're doing it. So it was basically me and my son starting it. So we're like 2 people. We went to this little convention here on the Iron Range in Minnesota, got some people to sign up. We had a party in my front yard that was the launch party, basically. And we'll kind of talk about other events later, but it was like the launch event, and we got some people to sign up, and it's kind of snowballed. We went to some other conventions, got some club tables. Places were nice enough to let us come and not charge us. So we were able, because we had no money. We're like just a startup club. And we started in June of 2023. And right now we're closing in on 500 people on the Facebook group, which is pretty sick, like going from nothing to 500. And we've got about 50 people who are like, we don't do Facebook, but here's my email, here's my information. So it's grown a pretty decent amount just in less than a year. So really what we want to do is, and we put the name Alliance in our name on purpose because we want to work with other groups. So I flew down to Tennessee for their summer event. I'll be going down to Georgia here in May for their big May the 4th Rogue Fun event. So to kind of network with them. We have then, since this kind of started, and we got collectors together and people that are just passionate about Star Wars, sci-fi fandoms, we ended up creating a nonprofit as well. So that's where some of our event stuff comes in. We have partnered with other local charities that kind of fit our mission. And so we have the 2 components, the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance for the fun, the collecting, the trading, all that stuff. And then also the nonprofit that helps benefit kind of children and family charities and mental health charities. So, yeah. So that's the kind of the short version of it.
I think that's awesome that you've made it a nonprofit and given it purpose other than, a bunch of nerds coming together to have a good time. There's something to do with your fandom. That's awesome. Yeah.
And as I've talked to people, I've talked like at these conventions, just talk at the end, like, oh man, I don't have a voice. But basically I'm like, a lot of like kind of clubs like this could just be this bunch of old dudes reliving their childhood, but we want to be a bunch of old dudes reliving our childhood and then teaching the next generation or 2 generations down to kind of do the same thing, to care about your friends, to connect with your friends, have community, play with your toys. I've got probably 500 loose vintage figures that are just in a bin, and like all people are blown away. They're like, can I touch this? I'm like, of course you can touch it. Take it out, move it. I'm like, they're toys. They're like, you can't do that. It's a Star Wars toy. I'm like, you don't realize there's literally millions of these around. Play with these toys. It's okay. I'm like, it's not a vinyl cape Jawa or like something blue snag or anything like that. It's Luke X-Wings and like a beat up Leia or Han Solo Bespin whose arms spin like a helicopter every time.
I've got a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no double
Best-
telescoping, Obi-Wans or Vaders
I've
or
never
Lukes in
I've
that?
never come across one of those. Like, interestingly enough, as in the club, I'll tell a quick story here. So there was a gal that I met in Minneapolis at an event, and she's like, "Oh, we've got some Star Wars stuff. Like, can we post it on your club?" I'm like, "Well, of course, that's what we're for." So she posted these 2 stuffed Ewoks, free to a good family, just pay the shipping. And I was like, "I love Ewoks, I'll take them." And then she posted a Escape from the Death Star game. Somebody else, I'll take it. And then she posted some like Power of the Force 2 era 12-inch figures. They're just like whatever. But I had messaged her. I'm like, well, just send me what you got. Send me some pictures. Like, I'm always looking for stuff for the club. We do giveaways. So she sent pictures, and it was like Power of the Force, Power of the Force, Power of the Force, episode 1, something that looked like an early bird. And I scrolled past it, and then a couple vintage, and I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, can I call you? And she didn't answer me right away. So I thought it was like, okay, here's Creeper wanting to call me. She messaged me the next day. She's like, sorry, I was busy. You can call me right now. I was like, I just want you to know, please do not give this away on my site. Do not give this away, period. But please, I don't want to be the collecting group that somebody snaked an early bird set for free. And so I ended up meeting up with her, and I said, look, I can do one of a couple things. I can buy this outright from you. I won't pay retail because I just can't afford that, but I can give you a good amount, or I can try and broker it for you. I just do not want you to give this away. And she told me the backstory of how she got it, and it was all legitimate. I had somebody else come in. Yep, this is all legitimate. The baggies were sealed. It's the whitest R2D2 I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my!
She had the mailer, the box. She still had the box. She was gonna throw the box away. I had messaged. I said, "Do you have the box? It kind of looks like this." She's like, "Oh, this." She's like, "I was gonna put this in the recycling." I'm like, "Don't. That box. I just saw one on eBay for $700. Don't throw that box away, please." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" So I was able to help her right around Christmas time get some money to buy presents. I got an early bird set, and we both went away happy. But I was just like, please don't throw that away. Please don't.
All right. That is awesome.
But not double telescoping. It's just the single.
No rocket firing Boba Fett's in there anywhere.
No.
Still, just the sealed early bird set alone is that's an expensive piece.
Yeah, I don't grade stuff. I have one piece that's graded. I have a TIE fighter, first run TIE fighter, white TIE fighter with the LP on it. Got that graded. That's the only piece I have, but I'm like, I've got to get this early bird set graded because it's that nice.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Whew. I've never been a fan of grading anything, but if I ever found something like that, it would have to be graded, sealed, and protected for sure. Oh wow! Okay, you win.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that up. That's
no. I've never found anything quite that cool.
That all
ever
happened because of the club. That was a pure club thing because she met us. Otherwise, she would have probably just given it away or donated it to Goodwill or Savers or something like that. She at least got a good amount for it, and I've got it in my collection.
Fortunately, she found somebody who's honest about it. A lot of people wouldn't have been honest about it.
Right,
a lot of people would have took it and told her, yeah, it's worth about $10 here. Here's $20, thank you, and then walked away. And
I think there's two kinds of people out there. Those like this woman who really don't know what they have.
Right.
And then you've got the person who's, oh, I've got this very rare Mandalorian that there's only 75 more over at Target,
Right.
Yes. Don't undercut me. I know what I have. Yeah. You've got $12 is what you've got.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I've got some of those folks that I've tried to work with before. I'm like, hey man, I'll help you out. And sometimes they want some help. Sometimes they're like, well, I know that this is worth that. I'm like, then go it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop you. Go ahead and sell
Sell
it.
it.
That's okay.
I found way too many of them. It says Star Wars on it, so it must be worth at least $100.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And unfortunately, most of the time, it's just not.
Right.
Or it's.
And I
or
try
they-
to educate people. It's like, hey, this is the one, like the Vinyl Cape Jawa. That's like my go-to. Like people type in Jawa, the first thing that pops up is the $10,000 Vinyl Cape Jawa. I've got a Jawa. It's worth $10,000. No, the Jawa you have is super cool. Maybe like, $30-$40, but not $10,000. So I'm not gonna like sit here and argue with you, but I'm gonna educate you.
Yeah, I'm the weird collector that I don't have to have everything graded. In fact, I don't have anything graded. I just want mine on display. It's more of an emotional connection to my childhood, even things that I've picked up as an adult. And I buy beaters all the time because I make dioramas out of them. I bought a couple of playset bases from you a year or two ago.
Yes.
And they're part of
I've
my
got some more if you're
diorama.
looking.
Yeah. Well, I do need a turret. We can talk later about that. But yeah, I buy beaters just to put them. Hey, it's a dead soldier now. I don't care if the paint's coming off him. Yeah, no.
Right.
So
yeah, I buy beater. I do customs. I did started with like Force Awakens and did vintage style. So basically like retro collection now is what I was doing.
Oh,
and then
cool.
I'm like, oh man, now they're doing retro collection. I already did that. Anyway, so that's kind of what I've done is turn like Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Mandalorian, Rogue One, like figures, take all old vintage figures. I don't use any of the modern stuff and just kind of like repurpose them and repaint them or mold them. And I've got maybe 70, 75 figures that I've put together.
Oh, wow.
I've kind of gotten away from
cool.
it because I've been busy with the club, but hopefully when things settle down here a little bit, I can get back into some custom stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like you're still pretty busy. The Frozen Force.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. I know that was just a recent event.
Yeah, those are our badges there. So on the 13th of January, we had the inaugural Frozen Force, and so you were at ICCC last year. So the Salacious Crumb badge there, the Frozen Salacious Crumb, that is actually Leia Cameron designed that. She was the badge artist from ICCC last year. So coming out of our summer just kind of kickoff event, I had a young gal named Sophia Conley draw a Princess Leia image that was stunning. And you would have thought it was a photograph, but she had sketched it and painted it. We auctioned it off. And afterwards I was like, well, what do you think about doing like a bigger event, like a bigger artist event? And she's like, that'd be cool. And then I reached out to Leia Cameron, who had done our badge art, patch art that I commissioned from her. She said, I was like, well, what do you think about that? She's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'd do that. And then I reached out to another guy that I had connected with. His name is Dave Wheeler. He's a comic book artist out of Minneapolis, and he did the Wampa image there on the badge. And he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. So it kind of grew out of those three people, and then we kind of expanded, and I had about 24 artists involved. And basically what the ask was, hey, would you create an image, a piece, a painting, a poster, or something, and donate it to us that we'll auction off at this event to raise money for the charity. And the response was huge. Like I said, it went from those three up to about 24 or 25 artists who donated pieces. So folks like Billy Martinez, who did the badge art a couple years ago, he donated a Jawa print. A couple of the artists who were down there before, like Jeremiah Pantoja, Alex Salazar, Josh Phillips, the patch maker. He made this patch specifically for us. So the only way you get it is through us. He did that. We had a poster artist named Tim Arns designed our poster for the event. And then just a bunch of local artists and folks that are kind of common on the convention tour up here in the kind of the Midwest have been involved. A couple tops artists like Kevin Cleveland and Dan Lawler donated pieces.
Oh, I met Kevin at ICCC last year in 2022,
yeah, super talented
actually.
Okay, super talented and super nice. Like I asked him for a single thing, he sent me 9.
Wow.
So I was like, cool. And then anyway, so it grew. And what we did was we rented a little local shrine event center here. We had kind of artist alley, auctions and raffles, giveaways. We had a dinner, the patch that we gave to everyone. And we had about 300 people show up in below zero weather here in Duluth. So for a first year event, having 300 people through the door was pretty sweet. The local news came. People are like, they want you to talk to the news. I'm like, what are you talking about? I got something to do here. What? And like, no, the news is here. I was like, oh, okay. So they did a little feature on us, and it was like on their website, the first image you see on their website that night. And more importantly, we were partnered with the Minnesota Masonic Children's Clinic for Communication Disorders, which is a bigger mouthful than the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance.
Yes.
Basically, they're a speech clinic here in Duluth, and they provide free services to all of their families. So maybe family doesn't have insurance or insurance doesn't cover everything. They can get speech services at no charge, but it's all through fundraising and charitable giving. And we partnered with them and said like, hey, what do you think about this idea? We could maybe raise some money for the clinic. And they're like, yeah, that'd be great. And I was like, well, we raised about $1,100 for our other partner, the Pediatric Oncology Treasure Chest this summer. We did about $1,100 and donated. And they said, that would be wonderful. If you could do that, that would be wonderful. And I was like, well, we'd like it to be a little bigger. Our goal, we're shooting for $2,500. If we could give you a check for $2,500 based off of this event, off the auctions and raffles, they're like, man, that would just be the greatest. We ended up raising over $5,000.
Wow.
In one night at this event. So needless to say, the clinic is very happy. They're already talking about next year. The shrine building told us, they said, we've never seen as many people at an event here before. They've already got us on the calendar for next year, and we haven't even asked them. So it's the hope is that this is just a first of many. And we want to kind of make it an annual. Up here in Duluth in the winter, it is hard to get around sometimes, but there's not a lot of stuff to do unless you're going to go skiing or snowmobiling, maybe ice fishing. So some kind of inside nerd event, I think people are just dying for. So I think we could really make this a really big time annual thing that just hopefully promotes the artists. None of the artists had to pay to table or be there because we wanted to promote the art that they donated and provided. And then all of the auction and raffle, all of that money goes right to the charity.
Oh, that is
so
awesome.
Impressive. And your group is less than a year old?
Yep. The group is less than a year old, and the nonprofit officially started in September. So the event is run by the nonprofit because, we don't want to get in trouble for running a Star Wars event. So it's not the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance that does that. We're just partnered with them. The nonprofit is just an acronym, the mnswca.org. And that's kind of like the promotional body that does it, and all the funding goes through them. But less than a year to go from being in my front yard to having 300 people giving us $5,000 for the clinic was a pretty big deal. It was pretty cool to have that happen.
Oh, that is awesome.
Wow. I know when you started advertising it, Scruffy and I were saying, wow, that'd be fun to go to. But it's the second week of January, and there's no way I'm driving through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the second week of January.
No,
you're not. I thought I was driving.
Well,
Shut up, and hang on.
I've ridden with you, Scruffy, and I've survived to tell the tale. But
So far.
Oh,
But-
you
but,
big crybaby.
you know, just because we didn't make it, I am so impressed that you've gotten such a great turnout. You know,
Yeah.
in your first year of existence, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And just the excitement of it. We've sent out like some surveys afterwards, and they're basically the feedback is do it again. We would actually pay more for it and just add a couple things. So we've already got ideas for future.
So, what's your next event?
So the next event is actually something, and it's kind of weird. It's called TeebCon, Teeb. And so the short story on TeebCon is when I first started working with kids at the place that I work with, there was a young kid, probably like 9 years old. He had a little bit of a speech impediment, and he couldn't say Steve. So like the kids call me Steve. That's my name, Steve. He called me Teeb. Teeb, I miss my mom. Teeb, I want to go to bed. Teeb, I'm tired. And it was just kind of a cute thing. So it kind of became a little silly nickname that I had. And when I started the group, my friend Scott, that I had worked with at the time, he said, we should call it SteveCon. And I was like, eh. And then we're like, no, call it TeebCon. And then it just was like kind of a joke. So that event we had in my front yard, we called it TeebCon. So at the Frozen Forest, we said, we're going to have another event this summer. It's going to be bigger and better. We're going to call it TeebCon 2024, and it'll be a 2-day event, kind of mini Comic-Con style here in Duluth at the same venue. But we'll have vendors, artists, panels, guests. There's a card game up in this area developed by some folks on the Iron Range called Ward, the card game. It's like a mixture of Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, because it has card play and dice rolling. So they're going to be doing an event there. And then we'll have like food trucks and live music. And so basically like all of the festival Comic-Con type things on a little bit smaller scale to begin with. And then hopefully in the future, moving to a bigger venue, but TeebCon will be at that same event center that can probably hold maybe like 600 or 700. We'll put some tents up outside to have outdoor music and stuff like that. So it'll be not on the grand scale of a Comic-Con yet, but that's the next step for us is a 2-day event.
You get 600 or 700 people for a 2-day event 1 year into your group's existence.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And I think that one of the interesting things about where I live here in Duluth is, if you're familiar at all with Minnesota, which is like, this is Minnesota, Duluth is right here at this crux. Minneapolis is down. Nothing happens above my finger. There's nothing up here. It's like people consider that South Canada. Like I basically live in South Canada. We're kind of forgot. There's a convention every weekend in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul area. But go north, there's not much. There's the small one we went to last year called Range Fan Con, which is a great little event. And then I think if we could jump in there too, there's just a bunch of nerds up here dying to do stuff because we have 3 colleges up here and it's a summer destination. People like to come up here. But us nerds, we need something to do.
I laugh because we're in the same problem.
Michigan's the same way.
middle of Michigan is a larger city called Grand Rapids. Anything north of Grand Rapids, it doesn't exist. There's just nothing up there.
Yeah.
You're in the
Oh, I get it.
wilderness.
Yep.
Yeah,
We're very much the same.
Basically, Southern Canada up here.
Mhm.
I lived down in Virginia for about a decade, and people would ask where I was from. I'd say Michigan, and they'd say, "Oh, Detroit." No,
Mhm.
there's Detroit,
Not
and
even
then there's
close.
the rest of Michigan.
Right. Yes.
Although right now we're all on board the Lions train,
Fair enough.
So, as creator of the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance, I got it all out that time.
Yes.
You're obviously a collector.
Yes.
What you have a focus? Like vintage or Clone Wars or a specific character or anything?
Yeah, it's kind of evolved. I mean, I did the vintage run. I don't ever anticipate getting a vinyl cape Jawa, but I've got my vintage run with the blue snaggletooth and yak face, and I mean, I've got hollow tubes Tuscan Raider. That's about the extent of my variation stuff. Got the last 17, and I was like, okay, what do I want to do? So then I started collecting a second set, and then I'm like, I don't really need a second set. Like, what am I doing? I'm gonna pass my one set down to my son when I die. I think he'll get that. We don't need to. So I sold that second set off, and I've been more focused on like Clone Wars, the animated figures from that era, like the really thin versions. I like those, but man, some of those are pretty spendy. You can get vintage figures for less than those, and people don't necessarily like, you tell them that, but like the production runs were so low on a lot of those Clone Wars figures that, I mean, there's literally millions of Boba Fett's out there. Like people like, oh, Boba Fett super. No, if somebody can have 700 Boba Fett's in their collection, literally, there's a lot of them out there.
Who would that be?
But like finding an Apo or a Kix or some of these clones that were very like specific, or the Doctor Doom clone, like they're just hard to find. So
wait, what's a Doctor Doom clone? I'm not familiar with this.
So I don't remember what the name, but his coloring is like Doctor Doom.
Oh, really?
Like,
okay.
The green and silver of Doctor Doom from Marvel. Like, there's a clone. I think he's like a clone captain, or maybe an ARC trooper. But that's what he looks like. Looks like Doctor Doom.
Oh, this is when we need Brown Leader, because the Clone Wars are his thing. You start talking about Captain Rex, he will go for hours. So, Brown Leader, if you're listening, call in. Oh,
call in, please. Now, I know who you're talking about. I cannot remember the name.
Just call him Doom.
Yeah, there you go. Let's call him Doom.
Battle of Ringo Vinda. So Doom was a clone commander. So he kind of looks like if you repainted Cody with like the visor with Doctor Doom colors. Anyway, so that, yeah, I've seen one, but it was a little more expensive than I wanted to spend at the time. But anyway, so that's kind of my new focus. And then kind of like a broader focus that I have now is like fan made art. So like patches, buttons, stickers, posters. I really like Jeremiah Pantoja's stuff, that like graffiti style.
He paints the walkers, doesn't he?
He does. I'm bringing one in October. I'm like, if I bring a walker, will you paint it that we can auction off? And he said he would. So I've got a walker in my basement that I need to get a couple parts for, but it's all ready. And then I said, I also think this would be sick. What would you say to bombing Ewok village? So doing the same type of graffiti art on an Ewok village, because he's done some graffiti art Ewoks. And like, get the village, get the Ewoks in there, and you auction that thing off. People would go nuts for that. I would. I'd be like, oh, I got to bid on
that's cool.
That would be pretty awesome, yeah. So what's your favorite piece in your collection?
Ooh. I would say, well, I mean, I've got that early bird set. I really do like the TIE Fighter because there's kind of a story behind it. So I've got this in-box TIE Fighter, first run white one, the first iteration of it, never been out of the box. It's the only piece I've had graded. But there was, when I kind of got back into kind of buying and selling toys again and trading, this woman had reached out to my wife that we had gone to church with, and she was like, we were like just on Facebook, she's like, your husband likes Star Wars, right? Yeah. He does stuff with toys, right? Yeah. And she's like, I've got a bunch of Star Wars toys in my truck. Would you be interested in taking a look at them? And she sent me a couple pictures of the stuff that she brought in, and it was the first 35 figures made, except for Boba Fett, still in package, the clearest bubbles you had ever seen. She had an uncle that worked at a store, and he bought 3 sets of everything. There there was her and her two cousins. Her two cousins opened everything and they played with it, but all of hers went into a cedar closet. And if you know anything about cedar, it keeps the moisture out and everything. These were pristine. The R5D4, I know the guy that bought it. I know who bought it. Sent it up, and it was like an 85 plus.
Wow.
They're just like blown away by it. Anyway, so she had all these. She didn't know really what she had. She had her cat walking on them. I was like, please get the cat off the figures. Please don't let that happen again. But she had the first 35 figures minus Boba Fett. And the reason it was minus Boba Fett is she had 2 mail away Boba Fetts. So they didn't need a carded one because they had mail away ones. She had this TIE fighter that was never out of the package. The tape had been cut, so it couldn't be graded as a sealed one, but it was never taken out. She had a bunch of other stuff too. She had a bunch of boxes, and she was like, "Oh, the boxes are in the recycling." I was like, "Could you get those out of the recycling, please?" She's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because I'm gonna just please get them out." So it was another situation where I was like, I could give you X number of dollars. And at the time I didn't have a lot of liquid toy money. So I couldn't offer really what they were worth. Or I said, I can sell them for you. I've got contacts, I got connections. And I ended up with, at that time, gosh, this was like 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, before the big boom. But she ended up getting like $12,000. Wow. For the toys that I brokered. And she asked what I wanted. I was like, she's like, do you want a percentage or anything? We were negotiating ahead of time. I was like, how about the TIE fighter? And she was like, sure. And I was like, sweet. And I brought that to Chicago for celebration, went to the grading company. I think it was AFA, and like handed it to them because I didn't want to mail it to them. And that's probably like my centerpiece. That's probably like, yep, that'll be like an heirloom kind of thing. I think that will pass down. I've only seen one other one so far. I'm sure there's more out there. I saw one while I was at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, but otherwise I haven't seen another one since then.
That's awesome that you've not only got a grail piece, but there's an incredible story behind it.
Yeah. And now I'm like, why couldn't I have had this liquid toy money back then? Because I would have been like, I'm buying it all. And talk about graded. I don't like graded. They looked as if they had just come out of the box.
Oh,
because
man.
they were in that cedar closet, just pristine.
Do you want to hear my TIE Fighter story?
Yeah.
I got a TIE Fighter. It must have been Christmas 78, when the stuff first was hitting the shelves. And of course, I blew the wings off those things so many times, the springs wore off and, they wouldn't stay on. Mm-hmm. So my dad, I love my dad, but he drilled a hole through and put a peg through to hold those wings on. And that's the only TIE Fighter I have. It's got holes drilled in it, but I'll never get rid of it. I'll never get rid of it.
Yeah. That's a story there too.
Not nearly as cool as your story. So.
So you were at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. What'd you think of that? That was
I enjoyed that. One of the nice things was it's driving distance from Duluth. It's like an 8-hour drive, and we have family there, so it was like a good entry into the whole world of conventions. The setup was nice because it was like multiple floors. You didn't have to walk 5 miles. So it was set up pretty well, and I didn't have anything to compare it to, though. Like, I mean, I went to comic book stores, and like when they had like things in the mall where the other vendors like set up, but never been to a convention. So that was kind of my first entry into it, and it was just cool to be around a bunch of people that you sit down for lunch and you're going to talk about Star Wars. You stand in line and you're going to talk about Star Wars. You're going to meet an artist and he's going to talk about Star Wars. So like just being around people that just enjoy something similar was super cool. It did like I was just so like my mind was everywhere because there was just so much to take in and so much to do. Like you can collect pins, you can collect patches, you can get stickers, you can get buttons, you can get this and that and the next thing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So by the end of it, I was like, oh, I missed out on so much stuff. I'm not going to miss out. So when I went to Anaheim, I like got everything, like the fan made stuff. Like I took pictures that people were like, eyes were bugging out at how much stuff I got. And I was like, those are two extremes. ICCC, I brought it a little bit more down. Like, okay, I'm bringing stuff to trade and give and look, and I'm going to still be able to enjoy the whole thing of it too. So trying to find a happy medium there.
Yeah, definitely. Brown Leader and I were both at Star Wars Celebration in Chicago.
I
Nice.
was
It was yeah. He had to stay home. It was cool. I loved it. My first was Celebration Indianapolis in 2005.
five.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Scruffy and I were both at Celebration 3 right before Revenge of the Sith came out.
Gotcha.
Because I remember it snowed in Indianapolis and people were outside overnight to get in.
Uh-huh.
Actually, Scruffy and I didn't know each other at that time when we were both
Okay.
there. That was my introduction to Celebration, and I went to 5 and 6 in Orlando. And if you've ever been to Orange County Convention Center, it takes an hour to walk from one end to the other. It's just huge, and you're right.
Sure.
There's so much to take in. You can't possibly do it all.
Right.
And I think that's what's made ICCC so special to the three of us. Is, man, it's all right there, and you've described it better than anybody. It's the fan section, but it's the whole thing.
Right.
And then Mike Havens throws in these celebrities, and they're within touching distance. I mean, not to be creepy, but
Right.
Creepy.
But I generally don't pay for autographs, but I'll go into the autograph room with Scruffy, and they're like, "No, come on over here, take a picture," whatever. And it's like, wow, these people are just on our level for these events,
Yeah. So another quick IC story.
Do tell.
So with our logo that I had Leia design, obviously there's Salacious on there. I was at the hotel we were staying at in the elevator, and this guy gets in, and I was like, oh, and I'm like made the mistake. I'm like, oh, you're one of the toy designers, right? And he's like, no, I'm Mark. I'm like, oh, you're Mark Dodson. Oh, I felt like an idiot. Because I thought he was like one of the Kenner guys, and I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. He's like, no, it's okay. And I was like, I'll remember it next time. And like Mark, Steve shake hands in the elevator, and he leaves. Well, then on the last morning, Mark Dodson's out front. And I think this is kind of about the time that I was talking to you. He was out front smoking his cigarette, getting ready to go to the airport. And I was like, Mark. And he's like, no. I was like, oh, damn it, I did it again. I mean, darn it, I did it again. And he's like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm Mark. And I was like, oh. And he stood there for about 20 minutes talking to me. I was like, hey, how was your convention? He was like, really good and whatever. And I had my VIP box that opened up with like the James Arnold Taylor welcome and stuff. And I was like, would you sign the VIP box? He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, the box that like the VIP guest got. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, can I see it? And so I pull it out and I open it, showed him that. He's like, this is so cool. I'm like, I know Mike did an amazing job with this. So Mark Dodson signed my VIP box,
cool.
and he just stood there talking about all kinds of stuff. 1 week later, I just happened to be in Minneapolis for a car show, and there was a convention, like a Comic-Con convention going on at the convention center about 2 blocks away. So my buddy and I walk over there, and it's like $30 to get in. No big deal. Walk in. Mark Dodson's there. He's at the end of like Celebrity Row. No one knew who he was, because it was more cosplay, anime kind of stuff. So I went over there and I'm like, Mark. And he goes, Steve.
He remembered your name.
No, that's
Oh,
awesome.
man.
I'm like, and that cemented it. I'm like, Mark, Salacious is our logo. I'm calling Leia. And then when I talked to Leia, she's like, Mark was great. She got to talk to him a ton at ICCC. So she was super stoked to draw our logo. I said, Minnesota, Salacious Crumb, go. So she drew that, the badge with the frozen Salacious, stickers with Frozen Salacious. We've got a club button with Salacious Crumb holding a loon. And she drew.
You mean this pin right
that
here?
that one right
that
there.
one right
Yeah, you
there.
tucked that into one of the boxes you would send me.
Yes. So she did that. We have a birthday club that we send birthday cards to kids in the club. She drew a Salacious Crumb with a birthday hat. So anyway, Mark has been like super cool, and my hope is I had talked to him about coming to the Frozen Four. He had offered, and I'm like, we can't quite afford that yet, Mark. He's like, well, when you can, I'll come. So I'm hoping that I can touch base with him and maybe get him up here to Minnesota this summer, because he's like the great, like he's amazing. Like he just tells the greatest stories, and he's just down to earth, just a great guy.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's one of the beautiful things about the ICCC is they're right there, and Scruffy will tell you that we have plenty of smoking bench stories.
Yep.
Because I would go out and sit on the smoking bench. Disclaimer, I don't smoke. I have a vape pen. You've seen me use it. And every time I would go out and sit on the smoking bench, somebody famous would come out and hang out. And somehow Scruffy was always doing something else. And I'd be like, dude, get down here. Get down here.
You're missing it.
I mean, I was sitting out there one day, and Clem So came by. If you don't know who Clem is, he's in every movie you've ever seen, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. That about sums it up.
He's got this long silver hair. He was in Force Awakens, not Last Jedi, but Rise of Skywalker. He's been in a couple of Bond films.
Okay.
And he just sat down and started shooting the breeze with us one day. And who else, Scruffy? Who else do we just hang out and see?
The guy from Christmas Story.
Oh yeah,
the kid.
Yeah,
Billingsley?
Yeah.
Not
No,
Billingsley.
not
The one is, oh man,
I know. It's gonna drive me nuts now.
Yeah, it's gonna drive me nuts. Or we were getting on the elevator one day, the three of us, and we start talking to the fellow in the elevator, and I didn't know who he was, and Brown Leader goes, "That's Jeffrey Cantor from Daredevil."
Yes, he was great too. He was out
and
there.
you talked to him too, didn't you?
Yeah.
He was so fan friendly.
Yes. Yeah, he was awesome.
And the young lady from Daredevil, I can't think of her name either. At the top. I'm embarrassing myself here on the internet, but
Scott Schwartz.
That's right.
Scott Schwartz was the guy from
Scott Schwartz. Yep.
Okay.
Christmas Story.
Yes. Was he Flick or?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
And
Deborah Ann Wool.
Yes,
Deborah
Deborah
Ann
Wool.
Because she was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's super nice too. Anyway, there's some really great people that obviously that appreciate their fans, because there's some people that don't, but I think the folks that someone like Havens is going to get are going to be the people that appreciate their fans.
Yeah, they're just not
Absolutely.
above talking to you, and they don't know you from the next guy, and they're just going to shoot the breeze with you, and that's fantastic. And I hope with you getting to know Dodson that that opens up the world for you and your group. So
yeah, the one of the things that's been really, really interesting is, as I've gone to different events now, the voice actors and actresses are just some of the nicest people. I got to meet Ashley Eckstein.
She's great. She is so fan friendly.
I met a bunch of voice actors and actresses from Demon Slayer. The original Asajj Ventress voice, Grey Griffin Delisle. She's the sweetest, just
awesome.
amazing. And when I was at this event called Twin Cities Con, which is kind of our biggest Comic-Con in the Minnesota area, they had a really good guest list, and I had submitted an idea. They said, give ideas for panels. So I submitted an idea, not really realizing what that meant was that you would do the panel. So I said, well, I'm a therapist. A good idea would be fandom and mental health, and the combination of the two. and I submitted this at like a midnight. I'm like, what am I doing? And then like 2 weeks before the event, they're like, we love your idea. What do you need to do it? And I was like, reaching out to my friends, who will be on a panel with me? I need some help. And we put it together and it went great. And I went down to the artists and talked to Ashley Eckstein, because she's big into mental health and awareness. And she said that if we do that again and she's at Twin Cities Con, she would do the panel with us.
Oh, that's awesome.
Reba
awesome.
Burr, who's one of the Demon Slayer voices, she's like, oh, I wish you would have told me about this ahead of time, because apparently what they do is when the panel ideas go out, you can make a request to say, offer this to the guests, to the celebrity guests, and if they have a passion for something, they'll come do a panel with you. I'm like, I had no idea. And Reba was like, next time I'm at this event, I will be doing that panel, because she wrote a book about mental health. She was close to getting her master's of being a therapist. She's like, if I didn't do this really good gig, this voice acting gig, I'd be a therapist. So kind of that mixture there. And we did this panel. People loved it. We had like a super diverse crowd of like young kids, families, veterans. It was like, when I went and told the stars how many people we had 66, which was perfect.
Oh man,
66 people. They were like, that's great for a first panel. Sometimes we get 1 or 2 people. So I was like, I'll take 66.
that's awesome.
Absolutely.
It's great that you get participation from these celebrity guests.
Yeah. So my plug, Havens, if you're listening, open up your panel requests. I've got an idea. I'd like to do it down at Nashville, and I've talked to Josh a couple times about it. I'd like to do that. And I think one of the other things that I think is a really growing area with this is swag, like the fan made stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like the patches and the buttons. People love that. So to do a panel about what that is, because I mean, the stuff that Josh comes up with, his patch sets, and he's done the IC set a bunch of times, like the patch hunt. I mean, it just gets people interested, and you know, it's a lot of fun just to give stuff away to people that are just going to love it. So those are a couple of ideas, Mr. Havens, that I'd love to be a part of.
We have a
that's
panel idea that we're going to keep under our hats until we talk to Mr. Havens. And the swag, we give away stickers. We have a couple of different stickers we give away at our table at the podcast room. In fact, just yesterday I was pricing out some buttons, because I noticed this past year how big buttons have become, people putting them on their lanyards.
Yeah. I got a button guy for you. I can send your way. He's US based out of Chicago.
Nice.
And I can send that your way. And
absolutely.
He's great. And the nice thing with him, so most places you got to order like 100 of a design or 200 of a design. And if let's say you had 5 different designs and you only wanted 100 total, he'll just do 20 of each. He can do whatever you want. And his quality is like top notch and US based. So
send us
love
that off the air, because I'd be totally interested.
Yep, for sure. And he's got really good turnaround time too.
Right on. Well, at least I was thinking about this 10 months early and not 10 days ahead of time. This
10
time.
days
So I told you with that panel, I had to like throw things together really quickly. I'm going to grab something off camera here.
Where'd he go? Did they beam him up?
I got beamed up. So I wanted to do a giveaway at the panel. So I talked to my button guy. I'm like, how quickly can you get this done? I've got this panel like right away. He's like, send me the images and we'll get it. We'll just get it done. So it was our panel was called Fandom and Mental Health, Why a New Hope Matters Now More Than Ever. So we made hope buttons.
Oh yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Of Leia and Ahsoka. And we gave these away to people that came to the event. And like I said, he did like a super quick turnaround on them, and they look stellar.
They look great.
Yeah, those are awesome.
So
I love it.
We got a bunch made and gave them out, and hopefully I'll be able to bring some to Nashville this October too.
Excellent. Well, looking forward to seeing you there. Well, we're coming up on an hour there. We appreciate you being on the show. All honorary guests are become a member of Brown Squadron, and you get a flight designation and call sign. So
Are you ready for this?
Are you
I'm ready.
You are
I'm
officially
ready.
Brown 36, and your call
36.
sign is Wampa.
Oh, nice. I love it.
We figured you're from Minnesota, and it's colder there than it is in our little corner of Michigan.
Yeah,
so you
right
are Wampa.
There's the Wampa there.
There he is.
Yep.
Yeah, you are definitely usually way colder than we are.
Yeah.
At least we have a big lake tempering our temperature here. So
Yeah, our big lake makes it colder. So
Yes, it does.
Steve, tell us again the name of your organization, where people can find you, and how they can contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the collecting group, the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance, that's really about collecting, networking with other fellow fans. We have people that collect books, comics, video games, toys, like most of us. That's the Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance. We have a Facebook group, so just look up Minnesota Star Wars Collectors Alliance or MSWCA. It'll take you there. That Wampa picture is our banner. So if you find that, that's us. It's like 2 questions to answer, and you join the club. You don't have to be from Minnesota. We've got folks from all over the country. We've got folks from England. So you don't need to be local to be in the club. It obviously helps with coming to an event, but you don't have to be. So that's the club. Then our nonprofit is called mnswca.org. And it's kind of like the acronym of the club in a way, but we added the .org and don't have Star Wars in the name anywhere. And that is designed to be a fantasy sci-fi focused, family friendly nonprofit. We're a 501c3 through the IRS. And when we have events, it's charitable giving. We do take donations throughout the year. Our website, mnswca.org, has photos, links to our events. When we have events, you can buy tickets, get involved with the raffles and giveaways through the website. And as we announce more information about TeedCon, the tickets and vendor applications and artist applications will be all available on the website. And I try and keep it updated with fun stuff that's going on. And there's email links there and all of that. But so either Facebook through the club or on the website, that's the best way to get in touch with us and stay updated on all the cool Star Wars stuff and fantasy sci-fi stuff that's going on.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. And then
thanks for having me.
Yeah,
we could talk for hours.
Yeah. Just wait till October. We'll be like chatting away. I'll come out to the smoking bench and we'll be,
yes, come hang out on the smoking bench with us and see who else we can talk to this time.
You know what,
yeah.
Steve? We're probably going to have more of a man on the street thing with some video this year. So
nice.
we'll have to come over to the table and talk to you and get some more stuff live or
for sure,
or at
for
least
sure.
out on the net.
Yeah.
So.
I'm gonna get a GoPro and I'm gonna see if I can get anybody to talk to me or at least be that creepy guy with the camera.
There you go. There you go.
The creepy guy with a camera. I'm not sure about that.
That's probably what I'll get called right away. All right. So for our listeners out there, if there's anything you'd like us to talk about or have any questions for us, or just want to tell Brown Leader he's no longer allowed to take time off, you can reach us at brownsquadron@gmail.com or DM us through one of our social media sites. So, Steve, great to have you on today. And this is Brown 2 signing off for us. And you have been listening to Hyperspace Heroes. That's
no moon.
Oh, wow.
That was awesome. We need that bass. That's awesome.
All right.